Hi, I'm J.John. Welcome to Facing the Canon, and my guest today is Martin Zuch. Hi, Martin.
Hello.
It's great to have you on the program.
Good to meet you.
I've read about you, and I've heard about you from my friend, our mutual friend, Charlie Mackesy, and so it's good to have this opportunity to talk. Let's start at the beginning.
Yes.
Where were you born?
Well, I was born in Watford. I was brought up in a little village called Aldenham, and I then eventually moved into London when I was 17. I didn't do too well at school. I left with 1 O-level, which was in woodwork. And
Well,
then,
at least you had one.
Yeah.
That's good.
yeah, and then things just happened from there.
And then what did you go on and do after school?
Well, after school, I briefly worked in printing because Watford's a big printing base. And then when I moved into London, I worked in computers. Then I became a salesman and I was selling office equipment and telephone systems. And then in '87, I was selling to Merrill Lynch, a large banking organisation. And they offered me a job as a stockbroker, a private banker. And I managed to get in there by taking a few tests and things. And yeah, I stayed there for 5 years, and after that I started my own business in fund management and in the city and various things in the city of London.
And that was a hugely successful time. You were
was-
obviously quite good at that.
It was a hugely successful time. It was a hugely successful time. I made an awful lot of money, and my life was going in a very strange direction as well.
What do you mean by strange direction?
Well, I was brought up. My mother brought us up as a Christian family, and so I knew the Lord. I knew about Christianity, and I accepted the faith. But then, in my mid-teens, I decided to take a different path, and I went for the world and everything that the world had to offer. And by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was heavily into the world, and when I was making all the money, I would consider that I led a kind of a debauched lifestyle, and I bought anything that I wanted. I had big houses, etc., and that was the kind of life that I
Yes.
led.
So you were making a lot but spending a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And then did you hit rock bottom? What happened?
I didn't really hit a rock bottom. I drank a lot. And to make me confident, I used to have to drink. When I was with people, I only felt comfortable if I was drinking a lot, and sometimes I would dabble in recreational drugs as well. And that made me feel good. And then there was a major change in my life in the year 2000. Basically, after having been away from the Lord for 20 years,
Yes.
I was living in Switzerland in Verbier, and I was invited to go for a pizza with somebody that was someone's brother who was a vicar in Reading, John O'Wilmot. And I thought, I don't want to meet this guy, he's a vicar, but I'll go and have coffee, to respect the friend of mine.
Yes.
So I met this guy and had coffee, and there was this aura of peace about this guy, John O'Wilmot. Something about him that I really recognised. And he invited me to the chapel the day after, which was something they do in Verbier over the season. They have chaplaincies where Church of England
Yes.
people come and give services. So I was walking down the mountain towards the chapel the next day, and I was overcome by the presence of the Holy Spirit.
Just as you're walking down?
Just as I was walking down the hill. It was like a road to Damascus experience without going blind. And it was very powerful. And everything then came back to me. Everything made sense about Christ and Christ being alive and that he died for me. And it was a real powerful experience. And
So when you got to your coffee meeting...
and then when I got to the chapel,
Yes.
I don't remember anything about the chapel. I don't remember the service, nothing. I just remember going to bed at night thinking, this isn't going to last. What I've got isn't going to last. It will go. I woke up the next morning and it was still there. I felt the presence of God.
Yes.
And a couple of months later in the night, I think at about 2 or 3 in the morning, I was filled with the Holy Spirit. And, that was the package that I got.
In the middle of the night?
Yeah, yeah. I think I was just praying and I was overwhelmed by the power of the Holy Spirit and I was filled with the Holy Spirit.
So during this time, you were seeking God, you were praying?
I was, yes, I was seeking God and I was praying and I was looking for direction. And
how did that experience change you?
well, it's been really tough. I've read a lot of books since in the last 10 years, Christian books, I mean hundreds of them. And I read about some people that they have this experience where they give their lives to the Lord and everything about them changes. Their
Yes.
habits, their sin, they suddenly become freed and they're sin-free. But I know that 9 times out of 10 that's not the case, and that
Yes.
wasn't the case with me. There was the process of the renewing of the mind, and I had to go through a very painful process of obeying God and learning God's ways, learning His
Yes.
ways, and it has been painful. And I've gone through, the alcoholism was a difficult road for me, and I've gone through that process and just changing as a person and learning how to be like Jesus. But it's been a wonderful experience and every day is new and I'm excited about it.
And obviously through that experience, your kind of heart and focus on people around the world began to change.
I always had a heart for the poor,
Yes.
but didn't really know what to do with it. I remember once volunteering for NSPCC to say, look, I'll raise money for you and I'll sit in your office because I thought I was quite good at it.
Yes.
But it never came to anything.
Yes.
So I really did have a heart for the poor. And in 2005, that's 5 years after I came back to the Lord, I was given the opportunity to buy land in Zambia. And I bought 2 pieces of land. One was in Livingston, where Victoria Falls is, very large piece of land I got from the government. And another piece of land in Ndola, which is the Copper Belt. They're about 600 kilometres from each other.
Yes.
And the one in Livingston, I carved out of the bush, I carved out 700 hectares. I had a partner that was on the ground doing this. We carved out 700 hectares of bush into irrigated farmland. And we pumped out
Wow.
water from the Zambezi 3 kilometres up the ridge and on these big circles that you see when
Yes.
you fly over.
Yes.
And we had 200 hectares of bananas there, wheat and various things like that. And the idea was to build up self-sustaining businesses that would provide employment for the local people, also a for-profit company, and then build schools and health clinics and things like that.
That was the plan.
That was the
So
plan.
how many people were you employing?
In that particular one,
Yeah.
about 250
Locals were being
locals, yeah.
employed.
And then the other one in Ndola, about, 150 to 200 people there as well. And there I had more contact with that one and a local ministry there. We started up an NGO and a charity, and we built our first school block. And we took on the first grade 1 kids.
Yes.
And some of these grade 1 kids were 12 because they couldn't read or write or anything. We took on our first grade 1 kids of 60 children, and now we're up to 410 children, actually between 410 and 450. So each year we take on new children.
Yes.
and we build up the school like that.
So this is, you've just come back to the Lord, you're following Him, and you just feel, hey, I've got to do something.
Yeah.
And you get on and do this.
Yeah. I
By
take them-
yourself, basically.
Basically
with a-
by myself, and I put in a large amount of money. I borrowed a large amount of money from Barclays Bank. I took on these big projects and started these schools and also small self-sustaining businesses and planted a small church.
And all was going well until...
All was going well until the copper price collapsed and the currency that we were selling our bananas, it's their banana plantations predominantly, the copper price collapsed and the currency, which is called the kwacha, devalued by 50%.
Yes.
So we were paying back in dollars and we couldn't meet our payments. So eventually the big farm got taken away
The one with all the bananas.
They both had bananas, but the big one was one at Victoria Falls.
Yes.
It had a large debt and there was a lot of investment and we just couldn't pay it back.
So the bank took it away.
The bank took it away.
Took it back.
Yeah. Then I was left with
So was that quite devastating?
I fought for about a year trying to save it. I spoke to everybody I knew. I used every angle that I could and I tried to save it. And I thought it was something of the Lord because I was doing a good thing. And but it wasn't to be, and it left me. Then I was left with the smaller farm, and that developed a disease, which was quite predominant in the area, and slowly the disease was wiping out all the bananas. So I couldn't afford to pay the debt that was on that farm.
Yes.
And only recently that one was taken away from me as well.
So did you feel a little bit like Job?
Job's my middle name. Everything was going wrong. Everything was going wrong. I managed to hold on to the school and get 40 hectares to secure the school so I could continue with that work. But only having lost that farm, I've known about it that I was going to lose it for a number of months now, but only having just lost that now, go back a year, I started getting involved in a beekeeping project and with a local missionary out in the area.
Yes.
And he needed me to come on board for investment and for other input. And we now have 4,000 beehives in the bush and swarm boxes, about 2,000 swarm boxes. We hope to have, in the next 3 years, I would say 20 to 30,000 beehives in the bush. We give...
And that would employ how many people?
It would employ... We give 5 hives to each person.
Right.
With the view that they can have 10 if they look after the 5.
Yes.
And it impacts thousands of people because it's people in the bush living in the area.
Yes.
If you've got a farm, that's all very well, but they all come to the farm.
Yes.
But this can spread and spread and spread. And
then basically what they sell the honey.
They sell the honey to us because we guarantee them the market price.
Right.
And it's pure, clean, top bar hive honey. It's very special. It's organic because there's no pesticides in the area at all. And also we've registered every beehive, so it's fair trade as well. We'll be registering with fair trade. So we've got a unique African fair trade organic honey. Last year we produced 10 tonnes. This year we hope to produce in excess of 40 tonnes.
So like 10 tonnes, what does that mean in terms of, say, jars of honey? Would that...
Do you know, you caught me there, but let's say you've got 1 kilo of honey.
Yes.
1 kilo is 3 jars.
Right, okay. So we're talking of a lot of jars here.
We're talking of a lot of jars of honey, yeah. Yeah. And we hope to produce in excess of 500 tonnes of honey after 3 to 4 years.
Now, and this is in
Zambia.
In Zambia.
In Ndola, the copper belt.
Right. But you've also started some work in Ethiopia.
Yes. We've also started educational projects in Ethiopia as well. Because of the disasters that I've been going through in the last 2 years, last year I kind of almost had a free year of things unravelling.
Yes.
And I went to a conference in Newcastle and I met this lady. We were at a Jean Darnell day. And I met this...
I remember Jean Darnell.
Yeah,
yes.
Fantastic woman. I think she's well into her 80s and she stood up for an hour and spoke, and wonderful.
Tremendous.
And the lady I was sitting next to, called Eileen Brady, worked for Northumbria University, and we were talking a little bit about the work that I was doing. She said, come and talk to the people at the Disaster and Development Centre at Northumbria University, they'll be interested. So I went to see them, and at the end of our meeting, one of the chaps who runs the department said, look, we're doing this course in community well-being in disaster and development, a master's, an MSc. Would you be interested in doing it? I said, well, actually, I've only got an O-level in woodwork. And they said, well, we think you're capable of doing it. Just apply and see, what happens. So I did apply, and last year I did that course.
Right.
And I completed it, and I passed. I had a lot of help, I must say, but it was a very exciting course. And I'm doing the dissertation at the moment.
Right.
So I'm
that
telling
gave
you that
a year
story because that gave me a year
to think, for things
to unravel, and really for the Lord to speak to me And there is a big story to this in my life, and that is I made an awful lot of money, and a lot of people said that I had the Midas touch. Everything that I touched kind of worked and turned to gold. And everything started falling apart. I lost most of my money on these farms, and I had threats to my family and to my life when all this was happening, to the point that at one stage we moved out of our house and stayed with my sister-in-law in her house, and 5 of us all slept, my family all slept in one room.
Just to be safe.
Yeah, for a week. And I went through a period where in the afternoon I was so tired I would go up to bed and I would just pray, Lord, help me, help me, help me, and just fall asleep asking the Lord to help me. I was exhausted, and I was handing everything over to him. I was dying to myself. And it had to happen because I had to come to a place where I had to put all my trust in God for everything that I do. Because I was really relying on myself. When I wanted to do something good, I would pay for it. If I wanted to build a school block, I would just build a school block.
Yes. With the money that you had
With the money that I had accumulated and earned, yeah. And so there was no... The relationship I had with God was something that was very real, but I never actually had to trust him. I didn't really have the opportunity because I did it my way. So I was left in a position where I really had to trust God. And so the year when I was studying gave me a chance to think about things, to unravel and really to trust in the Lord. And I'm at that stage now where one major point I think that's worth mentioning is that circumstances shouldn't affect our joy and peace in Christ. And circumstances did affect that. If I would get a nasty email or something that I couldn't deal with, my heart would jump and I would be down and I wouldn't know what to do with it, and it would be an ordeal for me. And I've just been learning that we don't have to be like that. If we trust in the Lord, he'll give us that continuous peace and that joy. And it's a process that I've had to go through. And
but looking back, Martin, do you feel in retrospect or in hindsight that maybe the Lord didn't lead you to do those projects that you first did?
I've often thought about that, and I think the Lord did lead me into those projects.
Yes.
Because I had to go through the fire. I had to go through the fire to be refined. And that's exactly what I've been going through. And so I believe that everything that we do, if our hearts are right with God, there may be a lot of things wrong with us, but if our hearts are right with God and our intentions are right, I may have had lack of knowledge and I may have done things wrong, but because my heart was right, the Lord, in his way, got me through and put me on the right track. And I believe that that's where I'm heading. I'm sure I'm going to fall off the track and make mistakes. But I've learned a lot from it.
And how much of your own money did you invest, which you've lost?
To date, I think lost...
Or lost is the wrong word, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the wrong word, but...
It's the wrong word, but you've invested it, and because of all sorts of factors, it's out of your control.
In dollars, because that's the way I think. And that's because that's what I've spent really out there. On the 2 farms, $3.6 million.
Right.
And I've reinvested again in a fish project, tilapia fish, and also the honey, the beekeeping project. So more money has got into that as well. So
despite losing a significant amount of money, you weren't disappointed with God.
I went through confusion and I went through disappointment with God. I've read books like Philip Yancey's books on disappointment with God, or What's the Use of God, those books, and I've had to seek the Lord in all of this. But my relationship with the Lord is so much closer. I'm so much happier. And I wake up and I cast my cares upon him every day. Despite what happens, despite the horrible email, despite the threats, I cast my cares upon him and he brings me through. And
despite these disappointments, you're still committed and compassionate and motivated to help needy people, particularly in Africa.
I'm even more motivated now. And going back to to the degree course. There were 3 of us on this course only. One of the guys, he's from Ethiopia.
Yes.
And he previously worked at World Vision and for 2 years. And also he was a teacher for 10 years. And he did other things. And we got on really well. And he spent a lot of time with me over that year. And at the end of the course, I decided that it would be right, or we both decided that he should join me and Give Hope International, which is the organisation, and set up Give Hope in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, where we're starting projects with children, getting the children off the streets and putting them into education. And we'll soon be starting self-sustaining projects and other things. So we're at the growing stage now in Ethiopia. And so
so you've got a number of different projects on the go at the moment.
I've got a number of projects on the go at the moment, yeah, in Ethiopia and in Zambia. And so despite the problems with the farms, I've taken a new turn on the honey and on the fish. I'm a business person, so I do believe in trying to build projects for when the kids leave the school, projects that they can go into like woodworking, sewing, things like that.
Yes.
But they've got to work, and I've got to do things differently. I went corporate before with the farms, but now I'm doing things carefully and slowly. And the honey thing, which is good, it has no debt whatsoever, so I see that as forging ahead. And I'm excited about what's going to happen in the future. And I think the long-term vision is that I'll meet more people that I can connect to, and I'll do the same thing in African countries.
Sure.
For some reason it seems to be Africa, but that's just the way it is.
Yes. And so knowing for you that you're helping all these people with the beehives, I mean, if they didn't have the beehives, what would their situation be like?
It's a dismal life. That in the rural area in Zambia, they're on possibly less than $50 a day. When you get this figure of $1 a day, that's a kind of average of people in wealthy areas and stuff like that. But in rural Zambia, it's less than $50 a day. And it means their kids have to work in the fields, and they don't go to school. And they don't go to school, one, because they work, and two, you have to pay to go to school out there. It's a small amount, but they don't have that small amount.
Yes.
With the beehives, with their 5 to 10 hives, they'll earn an extra $200 to $400, depending on the season, $200 to $400 each year. That enables them, the kids, to go to school, a meal a day, and a school uniform. And it's just something that we're building up to. And we're impacting lives of thousands and thousands of people.
How does your wife cope with all of this?
It's been, she copes really well. It's been a difficult road for Caroline. She's seen me excited, and she's seen me in the depths of doom. But she's been by my side all the time, and she's been very supportive through everything that we've gone through.
And you're obviously, as you said, by your side, so you're in partnership with it.
I am in partnership with her.
Doing this.
She helps me with, we have a child sponsorship at our school that we started in September. It's £15 a month per child. We've got 410 children at the school, and so far we've got between 50 and 60 sponsors. There's a lot of work in sponsorship because you write letters to each other, you send pictures, you give background on the child. And Caroline's been doing the child sponsorship for me. And so she's in touch with Ethiopia, and she's in touch with Zambia, and she gets the information through and gives it to the sponsor. So she's been very helpful.
What would you say to people who are listening to our conversation now, who are kind of struggling with discouragement because they've tried things and they haven't worked?
I tell you what I would say. I remember being in Verbier, where I lived in Switzerland, in this great big penthouse apartment. Now, I've got to say, some people are discouraged because of monetary problems. I was discouraged almost for the opposite. I had everything, but I wasn't happy. Yes. And I remember having a serious problem with drinking. I just couldn't stop, but I was in love with the Lord.
Yes.
I remember getting on my knees next to my bed and saying, Lord, I can't cope with this any longer. I just want to be close to you, and I really love you. Whatever it takes, do it. Whatever it takes.
Yes.
And I meant that, but there's a price to pay. There really is a price to pay. And after what I've experienced in the last 2 years, I've been paying that price. But it's brought me much, much closer to the Lord. And for anyone that's out there that's discouraged, if their heart is right and genuine and they get on their knees and they pray to the Lord will come through for them.
The needs for the future for you, what are your needs?
The needs for me is to build up, give hope, to get all the children at the school sponsored. As I said, there's 410 children there.
Yes.
We get 60 kids each year, so it keeps growing. At the moment, we've only got 50 sponsored in Zambia and 10 in Ethiopia, and we would like more sponsorship.
Yes.
So we can build the school up to be a quality school. We can pay all the teachers' wages. We can build a health centre, and we can improve their lives.
So there's desperate need in Africa.
Yes.
And I like that story when Mother Teresa met this reporter, and the reporter said to her, Mother Teresa, I hope you don't mind me saying, but even with all the good that you and the Sisters of Charity do, it's still only a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
And she very lovingly looked at him in the eye and said, yes, but the ocean is made up of drops.
Yes, that's right.
So I suppose, in many ways, the needs in Africa are huge,
Yeah.
but it's, at least you're saying, well, I can't do everything, but I can do something.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, sometimes when I go out there and I come back, I sit on the plane and I think, this is pointless. This is absolutely pointless. It's too difficult, it's too tough, and I'm not impacting enough people. But it's worth it for the people that I am impacting. And God is a God of impossibilities, and we haven't seen what can happen from here.
Now, the name of the charity that you direct is called?
It's Give Hope International.
Which is obviously resonates a lot with your own life and your own story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give Hope International. And what's the website?
Yeah, it's givehopeinternational.org.
.org.
So
if anyone
easy.
wants to know more about your work and what you're doing and support your work, they just need to visit that. And,
absolutely, yeah.
And if anyone, can people contact you through the website?
They can contact me through the website, and I'm happy to speak to them. We're not that big, so I speak to people directly.
Marvellous.
And in any way I can help other people as well.
Well, Martin, you're a very unusual and very refreshing person to meet, and I admire both you and your wife for your commitment and compassion and quite outrageous courageousness in sowing the assets that you'd accumulated over the years, and pray God's blessing upon you for the future.
Thank you.
And that you'll know and see the favour of God as you try and help more people.
Thank you.
Martin, it's been great. Thank you very, very much.